In the heart of the vast African savanna lived a little lion cub named Leo. Unlike the other cubs, who roared with gusto and pounced with might, Leo was, well, a little different. His roar was more of a squeak, and his pounce was more of a clumsy tumble. The other animals would sometimes chuckle, not out of meanness, but because he was just so adorably unlion-like. Leo spent his days watching his father, the king of the pride, with wide, admiring eyes. His father was everything Leo wanted to be: strong, confident, and brave. His roar could shake the acacia trees and make the ground tremble. One day Leo would whisper to himself, "I'll be just like him." One sunny afternoon, Leo was practicing his pounce on a twitching butterfly. He crouched low, wiggled his backside, and leaped, but he missed, tumbling head over paws into a thicket of bushes. When he sat up, shaking dust from his fur, he wasn't alone. A tiny field mouse, with whiskers that twitched just as much as his own, was staring at him. "That was an interesting pounce," the mouse squeaked, trying to stifle a giggle. Leo's ears drooped. "I'm no good at being a lion," he sighed. "My roar is tiny and my pounce is pathetic." The mouse, whose name was Squeaky, tilted his head. "Maybe you're not supposed to be like the others. Maybe you're supposed to be Leo." Had never thought of it that way. He and Squeaky became fast friends. Squeaky showed Leo the secret tiny world of the savanna, the busy ant trails, the jeweled beetles, and the best places to find sweet berries. Leo, in turn, would give Squeaky rides on his back, showing him the world from a much taller perspective. They were an odd pair, a tiny lion and a brave little mouse, but they were the best of friends. One evening, as the sun painted the sky in shades of orange and purple, a strange quiet fell over the savanna. The usual chorus of evening chirps and calls was gone. A nervous energy rippled through the air. Leo's father gathered the pride, his expression grim. "A wildfire," he announced, his voice a low rumble. "It's moving fast. We must get to the river." Panic erupted. Animals of all shapes and sizes began to flee. In the chaos, Leo lost sight of his family. He called for his mother, his father, but his squeaky roar was swallowed by the crackling of the approaching flames and the thundering of hooves. He was alone and terrified. Just then he heard a tiny, desperate cry, "Leo, help!" It was Squeaky. The little mouse was trapped on a small rocky outcrop, surrounded by a quickly widening crack in the dry earth, caused by the intense heat. He couldn't jump across. Leo's heart pounded in his chest. The fire was getting closer, its heat scorching his fur. Fear told him to run, to save himself, but he couldn't leave his friend. Remembering Squeaky S-words, "maybe you re-supposed to be you," gave him a strange surge of courage. He wasn't the biggest or the strongest. He couldn't stop the fire, but he was Squeaky's friend. He looked at the gap. It was too wide for him to jump easily, especially in his panic. But then he saw a fallen log nearby. It was heavy, too heavy for a little cub to move, but he had to try. He pushed with all his might. His paws dug into the dirt. His muscles screamed in protest. He wasn't just pushing, he was roaring. And this time, it wasn't a squeak. A real, deep, rumbling roar burst from his chest. It was a roar born not of practice, but of desperation and love for his friend. It was the roar of a protector. The sound startled even himself. He pushed again, fueled by this new strength, and the log moved. It rolled just enough to bridge the gap. "Squeaky cross now," Leo yelled. The little mouse didn't hesitate. He scurried across the log bridge just as the ground beneath him began to crumble. Leo quickly followed, and together they raced away from the flames towards the safety of the river. They found the rest of the animals huddled by the water's edge, their faces silhouetted against the fiery glow. Leo's parents rushed to him, nuzzling him with relief. "Leo, we were so worried. You are safe." His mother cried. Just then, a hush fell over the crowd as they noticed the little mouse perched on Leo's head. Leo's father looked down at him, his gaze soft. "Son, we heard a roar back there, a roar that shook the ground." "Was that you?" Leo looked at Squeaky, then back at his father. He took a deep breath and let out another roar. It wasn't as loud as the one before, but it was deep and true and all his own. A proud smile spread across his father's face. "You saved your friend," he said, his voice filled with admiration. "That is true bravery. It doesn't come from the size of your roar, but from the size of your heart." From that day on, no one ever chuckled at Leo's roar again. He was still smaller than the other cubs, and his pounce was still a little clumsy sometimes, but it didn't matter. He had found his own kind of courage. He learned that being brave wasn't about being the biggest, or the loudest, or the fiercest. It was about standing up for what's right, protecting those you love, and being true to yourself, no matter how small you are. And as he grew, his roar grew with him, a sound that spoke not of power, but of the brave little lion with the giant heart. Thank you so much for joining me on this story. If you enjoyed Leo's adventure, don't forget to like this video and subscribe for more stories that warm the heart. See you next time.